Welcome to the Mindful Fire Podcast, a show about crafting a life you love and making work optional using the tools of mindfulness, envisioning, and financial independence. I'm your host, Adam Cuello, and I'm so glad you're here. Each episode of the Mindful Fire Podcast explores these three tools through teachings, guided meditations, and inspiring interviews with people actually living them to craft a life they love. If you're ready to start your Mindful Fire journey, go to mindfulfire.org/start and download my free envisioning guide. In just 10 minutes, this guide will help you craft a clear and inspiring vision for your life. Again, you can download it for free at mindfulfire.org/start. Let's jump into today's episode. Pete, welcome to the Mindful Fire Podcast. It's great to have you here, man.
Hey, thanks, Adam. It's an honor to be on your show for the first time.
Yeah, I'm absolutely thrilled to have you today. Everyone listening, this is a special occasion because we have the man, the myth, the legend, Mr. Money Mustache on the show today. So really thrilled to have you here. Let's jump right in. I have a big question for you to start. I'm curious what you think the biggest mistake people make on the path to financial independence is.
Yeah, that's a big question. And it's probably not a single answer because everybody has got their own issues. But I guess if we were to summarize like the most common one, it's always based around worry and fear. So people will often work too long because of what we call the one more year syndrome. And they're trying to plan for the worst possible case, not realizing that working forever is the worst possible case. They're not weighting the value of like additional years of freedom while you're still young. So one more year syndrome, and then just worry in general, because even after you retire, the worry doesn't necessarily go away. So a worry-prone person, that very same person who did the one more year syndrome, is likely to find other things to worry about as soon as they retire, if they ever do. And then they'll be like, oh, the health insurance is going to go up next year, or I'm worried about this and that, or all these different little things that aren't really much of a big deal, but your analytical trouble-finding brain is likely to find problems even there where there really aren't any. So training yourself to get rid of worry is the best skill for both pre and post-retirement.
Yeah, that's really interesting. And that's my thinking as well, is that people just wait too long to start living the life that they've created the freedom to live. We all are in this to create freedom and to create optionality in our lives and resilience to some degree to navigate the ups and downs of life. But really, the headline is create freedom in your life. But yet, people wait too long to actually leverage it. And then when they get there, they reach the number that they probably have adjusted 3 or 4 times up. They get there and then they have no idea how to actually live that life because they've never actually practiced it. I guess this idea of worry and fear, it resonates a lot. I've actually been spending quite a bit of time on Reddit these days, and the FIRE subreddits are all just people talking about, I have $10 million, $20 million, and I'm still working because it's important to show work ethic to my kids. And it's, do you really, everyone just like gut checking if they'll have enough money? And it's like, bro, you have $20 million and your life costs $80,000 a year. I think you're going to be fine. Do you think it's about the money?
They can certainly use money as an excuse because it's like a nice quantifiable thing. But yeah, really, I don't think anybody needs more than, even for a large family, in the single digit millions, probably less than 5 is enough to support pretty much any lifestyle. And if you can't survive on $200,000 a year, which is what $5 million of investments would basically provide forever, the problem is probably your spending rather than your life situation. It's probably a lot of stuff that you're making choices of that don't have to be that way. Yeah, I didn't know those subreddits exist. I've never really used Reddit, which is, I think, an advantage. One of the best things you can do is not be a Redditor, not very much anyway, and also not the social medias and also not the video games. I think it's way better to live like it's still 1970s and just guide your life like that, and then take occasional advantage of the technology industry to enhance your life, but don't base your life on technology.
Yeah, you can certainly get trapped in there and just go in circles and talk yourself into anything. You mentioned this idea of training yourself to not worry as much. Is there any practical ways that you've found that to be possible? It sounds great. People who worry Probably it's partly their personality, partly their learned behavior. It might seem hard to undo. Is there anything you've seen work?
There's certainly a lot of books on the subject and podcasts, and in fact, mindfulness, which the Mindfulness Fire podcast that we're on right now, mindfulness is a great tool to help understand your emotions and where they're coming from. And so it can often be a treatment for fear. And if you have an unexamined, if you just let yourself be afraid because you are, and if you've never worked on it at all, there's probably a huge bunch of easy progress that's just waiting for you, because by default, we are looking for problems. There's really interesting psychological studies that show up in books as a funny example is as people's lives get better and safer, they don't really feel any safer. They just keep looking for more and more problems because that's what our brains are trained to do. And it gets to the point where it's really ridiculous. So you can imagine like a super wealthy neighborhood on the coast of San Diego where everybody's rich and everything's awesome. And then they start finding problems with each other's like gardens and weeds and stuff. And they're like,
color their mailbox.
The Smiths are sending their children to Harvard. That's not really the kind of neighborhood that we want to live in. And just like they worry about these things that are absolutely not problems. And the perspective of seeing what real hardship looks like is certainly a nice anchoring point. And that's just like one of a million different things you can do to get perspective. And I think perspective is a cure for worry. That's one of the cures anyway.
Yeah. Yeah. Now that makes a lot of sense. Yeah. That you find people inventing problems. And yeah. The homeowners association situation is a great example because you just find like your mailbox is not the right height. Come on, guys. What are we talking about here?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So if you're in the middle of a war zone right now, like many countries are, then you're going to see what's really a problem. And nobody cares about each other's mailbox heights. They don't even have a postal service. So it's really, just appreciate that you're waking up every morning and there's sunshine and food, and then go from there and just start building a great life.
Yeah. Yeah, great point. A great call out on mindfulness. I should have seen that one coming, obviously. For me, that was the gateway into more self-awareness and more self-compassion and letting go of that fear. And I say a lot on this podcast that our stories create our reality. And what mindfulness helped me to do 5 years into my career was just kind of turn down the volume on everything else so I could start to identify these stories that were running in my head and were running my life. That I call them my greatest hits: not good enough, not doing it right. And it shows up in all kinds of ways. But as I brought awareness to that and I started to just question it, it lost its power over me. And so I can see how identifying these worries and really just examining them, like what is the chance this is actually going to happen, is probably a great place to start.
Yeah. If you build up a growing list of these things, and then also maybe start thinking about your friends and maybe start adding friendships and people in your life that aren't really worry prone, and maybe pick up those examples, because if you have a cluster of worried people, they're going to reinforce that. And watching the news or reading the news, that's really a professional worry propaganda system disguised as being informed about the world. They're telling you stuff that's happening in the world, but they're really focusing on the negative and scary stuff because that's what gets the clicks and that's what makes them the most money.
Yeah.
So editing that stuff and just adding like positive, interesting stuff into your life. If you don't even know what's happening out there, there's a lot of things that happen in the world that you don't need to know about. You genuinely don't need to know. Yeah. And it can't make you worried and in fact, there's actually millions of things that are super scary, super horrible that are going on in the world that just aren't in the news. So you don't know about them. And were you worried about those things? No, you weren't.
Not
it's
at
a
all.
Giant planet. Don't let the problems of 8+ billion people all be your own.
Yeah. Yeah, that's great advice. Just editing your mental diet, what you're feeding yourself, both food-wise and mentally, is going to make a huge impact on how you show up in the world and what you think about. Yeah. So let's take a step back. We jumped in. I'd love to explore this idea of one more year syndrome a little bit more. But first, I want to give you a chance to share a little bit with the audience about who you are, your journey, and what you're up to these days. I think everyone is familiar with you, but tell us a little bit about your journey and what got you excited these days.
I'm not sure how far I should go back.
Birth. Let's start at birth. I'm just kidding.
Yeah. Actually, I was born in Canada. That's an interesting fact. And I grew up for the first 25 years of my life as a Canadian and got my engineering degree there and started an engineering career. And I got recruited down to the US to work in even better tech jobs. And then I worked my way through the rest of my career here. And I saved and invested and then retired early. just before turning 31 years old. Retired at 30 is my jokey tagline sometimes. And then that was more than 20 years ago. So now I've lived half of my life in each country. I'm a citizen of the US. And at some point, after being retired for a while, I started writing about, hey, why doesn't everybody do this? It's just a matter of not spending all the money that you earn. And it seemed obvious, but not many people do it. Like, regardless of how much they earn, they tend to just spend it all, which is like inherently a paradox. Because if somebody else is living on half your salary, then why aren't you saving 50% and just living like them? Or at least in theory, it's possible. You could at least analyze that. So that's my background. And that's what led me to be on the internet sometimes and led me to end up on your podcast. And then since then, I've just been focusing on how does one go through a life of freedom where work is optional. And that's been really fun for me. I spent the last 20 years raising an entire child who's now a 20-year-old. And aside from that, just like learning and enjoying life is what I focused on.
Yeah, I love that. And that's what we're going to focus on a lot in this conversation, because there's a lot of people covering, including yourself, covering the how to get there. And I'm really interested in how do you live that life? How do you take advantage of the freedom that you've created to truly intentionally create a life for yourself and your family? And the listeners will know that I'm about 18 months into my early retirement, which I'm calling semi-retired entrepreneurship, because my vision was always to build a business, but in my own time, in my own way, without having to force it, without having to worry about putting food on the table, because that forcing energy and that just desperation almost, that's not what I'm going for. I felt that in the past. I don't want that. I just want to create, connect, have fun. And so very interested in how you have gone about creating this life and what you've learned has worked and what hasn't worked. Before we get to all of that, let's close the loop on 1 more year syndrome. We talked a little bit about the worry and the fear that people have and how it's probably not really about the money. Any examples that you've seen that people actually step over that? What snaps them out of it is what I'm wondering.
I think knowing that it's a problem is a big thing. And then having social support from other people, preferably people who have done the same thing and quit their jobs and say, hey, look, it really wasn't that bad. You don't even miss your job once you quit. That certainly helps. Sometimes coaching from another FIRE or an expert or even just a normal financial advisor can sometimes help. People tend to be afraid of change, so they stick to what they're already familiar with. That's a very built-in human nature. And a lot of the best things in life come from breaking your human nature instincts, because a lot of our instincts lead us to poor outcomes. Like, just if you eat whatever you want, you'll probably eat a lot of dessert and candy, and then that's not going to be good for your health and so on. And figuring out what to do and doing deliberate things, even if they're hard. And then the final thing that I find pretty good is just, if you think of your life as an experiment, and everything you do is an experiment, and it's okay if it fails because it gives you information, even in the chance that it fails. So just say, I'm going to try a non-working experiment, see what happens. Of course, you can still go back to work, but very few people do. That's, excuse me. And that's the interesting part is, if someone does not really like their job and they're ready for early retirement and they have 1 more year syndrome, and then they do get the courage to quit, those people never go back. You're not going to go back to a job you don't like. The only jobs people go back to are ones that call them back because they actually genuinely enjoy it. And that is a good thing, because you had a real reason, and then you stepped back and thought about it and then realized, yeah, that was still adding to my life. Maybe you'll go back part-time or under your own terms. And that's fine. I think work is great. I work every day. It's just not on businesses. I usually work on my own projects because I'm like a mad scientist in the way I live my life.
Yeah, I love the experimentation mindset and looking at your life as one big experiment after another. I think that people get caught up in this like thinking that it's irreversible, that once I leave work, that's it. There's no going back. And I think right now, what I'm hearing a lot of from people is AI is changing everything. What if there aren't any jobs to go back to? And yeah, maybe. But the way I think about that is, I'm glad to own the whole market. I'm glad to own all the companies that are being successful with AI. My only worry, back to worry, is what happens when there are no jobs and nobody can go and buy food because there's no income. But if we get to that situation, there's going to be much bigger problems, I think.
Yeah, that's a fundamental misunderstanding of the economy, though. First of all, new technologies have come all the time through history that
Mhm.
displays, and everybody always worried about it. And
Right.
this time it's different because it's replacing farmers, and most people are farmers. What are we going to do when there's no farming to be done because it's all done by these efficient machines? So now we have a new technology that's replacing human intellect. So we're thinking, oh, this time it's different because it's our brains. They're coming for our brains. However, what happens if you're a company, if there's a company that does have a bunch of employees and then they start employing AI to do work, the only reason they're going to do that is because it's making them more productive and more profitable. So it's leading to more profits, which leads to like more investment. So most likely what's going to happen is the economy is going to be accelerating and growing in new ways. You can't just displace people and fire them all and then everyone's staying at home, because all of their salaries are suddenly going into the profits of this company. And companies don't just hoard their profits. There's going to be more companies that compete for those profits, which means new companies will form. I want some of those margins. Like, this is how productivity gains work. They expand the economy. They don't shrink it. You're just going to see a lot of more rapid change because AI is a fast thing to roll out, even faster than farming equipment, because it's just like you can spawn a digital assistant immediately. I'm excited because as an armchair economist and an engineer who has followed AI since the beginning, and I see everything it's being used for, and I like spend hours every week listening to podcasts and reading books on AI. So I think the results are mostly going to be really good on average.
Yeah.
So not something to worry about, just something to be excited about and preferably follow. If you're still going to be working, the way to reduce worry about AI is to get good at using it, start experimenting with it at home and learn what you can do to it. And then suddenly you'll get insights like, oh, I could use this at work, or I could use this in my personal business, or how to start a new business. So the people who really get left behind are the people who are like, I hate AI and I hate how it's going to take my job and I'm never going to use it. That's true. If you're no good at using AI to become more productive, you're going to be one of the people that does sit at home with no job, because the rest of the economy is going to be using it.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a really good point. And I appreciate you bringing the economic angle here and like how the economy is going to expand and create new opportunities. Yeah, looking at history, that's obvious, which would make sense that it would happen here. It's just I don't know yet how it will happen, but it will. And either way, I'm also having a lot of fun playing with AI, looking at how I can bring it into my business, like these AI agents, this podcast transcript. There's so much that can be done on top of it. And that is like scratching the absolute surface of what's possible with this technology. So it's cool to see how it's evolving. But yeah, people wait too long to actually step into this next chapter. So I'm curious, the experimentation mindset, I would love to hear some examples of how you have built this experimentation mindset into your own life. So here's the thing most people won't admit about the path to financial independence. It can be really lonely. Your friends don't get it. Your financial advisor probably thinks you're crazy, and you're stuck navigating the ups and downs of the path to FI and the messy middle of FI, mostly on your own. I started the Mindful Fire Legends community because I realized I needed this space for myself. It's a weekly community space for people on the path to financial independence to connect, support, and encourage each other. We meet every Wednesday at noon Eastern to connect, practice meditation, journaling, and mindful conversation, exploring topics related to mindful fire and building a life we love now. It's intimate, honest, and the kind of community I wish I had earlier on in my path to FI. And I've made it super affordable. It's just $10 a month or $100 a year. That's it. There's no commitment, and if you're not loving it, I'll give you your money back. Learn more and join us at mindfulfire.org/join. Again, that's mindfulfire.org/join.
I tend to just have a lot of ideas hit me for things that I might be interested in doing or trying. So I often write them down in the morning, like when I'm having my morning coffee and first breakfast, as I call it. I'll usually be writing in a paper journal, and just a lot of stuff that comes up to mind. Like for me, a lot of it is construction. Like I'm often working on my house. So it's, I should try this neat thing with a solar powered hot tub, or I should get in touch with a certain friend and plan a visit together, or we do something together. And so just writing a bunch of ideas, and anytime that idea is a big one or involves change in your life, that could be a source of worry. But instead, I would think of it as an experiment and just throw yourself into it and see what happens. And I guess for me, the most recent example is the house I'm in right now is new to me after living in Longmont for 20 years. And my most recent house for 8 years or more, I just decided I was commuting to Denver a lot. And I thought, hey, why don't I just buy a house in this neighborhood where my girlfriend lives? And it's like a really great neighborhood. And I really enjoy the time I spend there. But I was also afraid because I'm like, wow, this is a big change. I'm going to be moving away from the town where I raised my son and a place where I have a lot of friends and I already have a house, and the new neighborhood's more expensive. So I'll be putting more money into personal real estate. Is that really what I want to do? So there was lots of like little fears, but I was already familiar with not honoring those fears. I just thought, no, I want to try it. It's going to be interesting. And I'm not going to know really what it feels like until I go there and do it. So I just took the plunge relatively rapidly, like just looked around at house listings for a short time, toured a couple that I like. I already knew a lot about the neighborhood, so I just picked the right one for me. And then I bought it after one tour and moved in like less than a month later. And I've been here now a couple of months. And I'm actually really glad. Not every experiment is a success, and that's totally fine.
Yeah.
But this one definitely is. I'm just really happy here. And now I wish I'd moved here sooner.
Interesting. And yeah, obviously there are other ways that you could have experimented on that. You could have rented a house in that neighborhood. You could have rented an Airbnb for a month, for instance, or a longer term. But there's all different ways to do it. And you're never going to know until you actually try it. Let me ask you this. How important do you think having a clear vision for where you're going? I mentioned before we started recording, I help a lot of people get clear on what they want their post-fi life to look like, because so many people in this movement are so focused on optimizing for the money, they get to the end and then they start trying to figure out what they want. So I'm curious, from your experience, I know you're experimenting all the time, but is there an overarching, here's where I'm going? And is that an important factor in your life? And I guess more broadly for the people on this path?
Yeah, I think after studying happiness for a long time and reading all the books and feeling what it really means to me and what it means to humans in general, I came up with this. I really boiled it down to realizing that a really great life is just a series of happy days, ideally like really great days. So the more often you have a great day and then you're lying in bed thinking, damn, that was awesome. I hope I have more days like this. That's all it takes to have a great life. And it can happen intentionally if you just set up your life so that these good days happen. So then I started breaking it down to what exactly makes a good day. And I have this sort of checklist, and it happens automatically, but sometimes I really do step through it just to remind myself. And it always involves time with friends, lots of adult conversation up to the right amount for me, expressing my creativity in difficult ways, preferably physical. So for me, that includes like construction or projects, or even just going for a hike with friends, and good food, plans, a nice, loving, caring, active, people-filled day that's a little bit like a traditional village life is what usually lives for me, creates a good life. So as long as I get those things in my day, then it always turns into being a great day. Like not 100%, of course, no one's always happy, but on average, it's a very high average of having these great days. And that's why I think back on especially like the last 10 years, as I've become more intentional about this, I just feel like, wow, this is a really good way to live a life.
Got it. So you have these pillars, or some of them might be habits that you do. Some of them are hobbies. Some of them are community-based things. And you put them together and create a really great day. And then you try to string as many of those as you can together.
Yeah. And we all know some examples of what would lead to a bad day. If you're stuck in a traffic jam all day, or if you're in an office and don't enjoy and you're getting negative feedback all day. So editing out the bad things that really can creep in. And that's one of the reasons I tell people, like, you should live, if you're going to have a job that's not home-based, you should live close to work and make sure you have a commute that ideally is not car-based and it's something that you enjoy. Because why would you design a negative thing into your life every single day, every single work day? That's way too big a thing to overcome. It's like a huge negative anchor on your life. And since all of our goals should really to be make the most of our lives, like it's relatively easy to move to a new place, like apartment or house, and or get a new job so that your commute is something enjoyable, because then you're going to be like walking, there's going to be birds singing, there's trees out there. Like what a huge boost to your life just from something that could be as simple as shopping around for a new apartment that's close to where you live.
Yeah, it's interesting. I think about my commute when I was working in New York City. I'm living in New Jersey. There's a few ways I could get there, and it is not close. I'm not going to get an apartment in New York City. That's just not where I'm at in my life, because that comes with a bunch of other downsides. But that said, I could take the train and then another train where I'm in this can, the entire time. Or what I was able to do was take a ferry. So I take a ferry across the water, and then I would get off and walk the rest of the way instead of getting off and taking a 20-minute subway. I could just walk along the water. And I was like, this is great. So starting your day that way versus sitting in traffic on a highway in a car by yourself, big difference. I can see how removing those negative pieces, just changing it to a more enjoyable mode could make a huge difference. Because if you're spending 3 hours of your day like that, it's tough to overcome.
And a lot of people don't question it because their coworkers are doing it, and it's regional. New York City is a big commuting hub. So people think, oh yeah, an hour, you're lucky. That's way less than mine. But the real standard should be like measured by the minutes. Like when I was buying my new house in this neighborhood, like a difference of 2 blocks was significant, because I'm like, this one, it's a 5-minute walk to the Sprouts grocery store, which is an awesome, nice shop where I can restock on sandwich stuff halfway through a meal. And like this other one that's several blocks away, that's 10 minutes walk. And that's a factor. It's not the only factor, but it's really important. Your immediate environment of the stuff you see every day, and like even the placement of trees or the windows, like the windows should face the sun because the sun makes us happy. A lot of like really simple things that if you were going back to a primitive village-based lifestyle, you would think about these things. You're like, where should I put my hut? I'm going to put it where I get some sun and where I get the shelter and whatever, because these are like the simple human things that are actually satisfying. And we forget about that in the high technology world. We're like, oh, I just need an apartment and there's technology will get me to my job so I can really live anywhere. But you're overlooking these things that are fundamental to your health and happiness, unless you are training yourself to look for them properly.
Yeah, that's really interesting. So as we think about people who are on the path to FI, but they're not there yet, but there's no reason that they can't identify what these pillars are for them.
Yeah.
What are the things that you want to fill your day with that are going to make you feel happy and create a successful day for yourself? And what are the things that you want to remove from your life? Some of them, like your job, maybe you're not ready to remove that yet, but of course you could change that into a different one that you enjoy more. But there's no reason you can't do that. And I help people do this. There's an exercise that I have on my website that people can download to start thinking through what their ideal day looks like. They can get that at mindfulfire.org/start if they want to do this work for themselves. But I guess I don't think there's any reason people can't start living these things now.
Yeah. A lot of things don't cost more than what you're currently doing. And even some things that do are worth it. But just learning about the real factors of what makes a good human life will probably serve you well throughout your career and afterwards too.
Yeah.
And there's all kinds of things like that. We won't get into them all here, but things about raising your children, like having simple activities where you're doing things together in nature usually leads to more happiness than scheduling them all over town to do every single organized birthday party and bouncy castle activity. Because the kids would rather just play. Like they'll often follow the lead of their parents, but they won't really know what they're missing unless, as a wiser parent, you can be like, this is what kids actually enjoy and what actually leads to a good childhood.
Yeah, that's definitely something I wanted to ask you about. Reviewing your site, you mentioned that a big reason for pursuing and ultimately living this early retired lifestyle was to be able to raise a kid on your terms. We'll get to that in a second, but I just want to talk about that point for you where you realized, I understand the math, I have enough now. Was it as simple as I have enough, I'm done? Tell me about that transition.
Yeah, that was about it. Me and my spouse at the time, we were ready to quit. We just decided, okay, we have to have the house paid off to a certain amount and have a certain amount in investments. And at that point, it's going to take care of itself. So we just reached that level. And I was like just a few months before our son was born. And that was a deadline as well, because we knew we wanted to be equal co-parents. And there's just no way that we're going to be like calling into the office or going into the office while there's a baby that's up all night needing care. And even with 2 parents splitting it equally, it was still like super torturous for like over a year. It's like being in a CIA interrogation nonstop for a year. That's what having a newborn baby is like. just
Yes.
sleep deprivation and all kinds of everything's happening at once. So I wasn't interested in splitting my time between a job and that. So that was a really good encouragement to quit. There's no such thing as one more year syndrome if there's a baby coming for me.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, for you, I think there still is for a lot of people for all the reasons we talked about. But yeah, the CIA interrogation, that's funny because I remember one time I was up in the middle of the night and I literally could not for the life of me remember the tune to Twinkle, Twinkle, Little Star. Like it's
Yeah,
so embedded in all of us from growing up. I couldn't remember it to save my life. It was
that
like,
makes
I am
sense.
losing it.
Yeah, the brain really shuts down if you compromise its sleep enough. And I just remember how painful that was. And it's probably one of the reasons we only end up having one child because now he's such a joy. I'm like, oh, I wouldn't mind two of you around. But it's like the first year or two is a very high cost. It really helps to not have to work during that time, though.
Yeah. I'd love your thoughts on how did FI and early retirement allow you to be the best dad you could be? Like, I'd love to hear your thoughts on how you went about doing that. Obviously, you didn't have the job, so you were there, but is there
Yeah.
anything? Because, and I'll give you a little context. For me, I'm there, I'm living this semi-retired entrepreneurship life, which is still work, which is still a pursuit, and I enjoy it. But at the same time, part of me is like, should I just be spending all the time where my son's not at school with him? There have been days where I just hang out with him in the day, but there also we have help from a nanny sometimes as well. So I guess that's where I'm coming from.
Yeah, I think so. First of all, what you said is right. I've always idolized the idea of being a really good dad. And I think a lot of dads don't put in a full effort traditionally, like all through the years, because they're like, oh, all through different societies, including our own, because they're like, oh, I'm the breadwinner. It's hard to make money. So I'm just going to play golf and relax on the weekends. And I think that's actually a cop out because it's much more difficult to take care of children and play with them and keep everything going in a household than it is to just play your adult fun games at the office where everybody's well behaved and nobody's having screaming matches and
Yes.
their diapers and
Fighting
stuff.
with each other.
So
Yeah.
what I approached it as is, first of all, the dad job was number one. That was my top priority, but I'm still allowed to do whatever I want in the little cracks between dad work. So we were two parents sharing it. So that already cuts the work in half, which is great. And we'd pass them back and forth. And we did a lot of stuff as a family, but we would still give each other adult time separately. And that was like a treat. I'm going to go out for coffee with my friends, my wife would say at the time. And I would say, yeah, I'm going to go do construction with my friends during my free time. And of course, you got naps, and naps are a joyful time for the adults to do their thing. And then as the kid gets older, then you have this joyful thing called school where you get 6 to 8 hours of free time every day. So then you can really get working on things. So it becomes a pretty nice work-life balance after that
Yeah.
first couple of years. And then, of course, if you have another kid, you start all over again. And that's why it really helps to not have a career that's your top priority. Like you can still do pretty good work, but the mantra I give to myself is I'm allowed to suck at everything except being a dad, because like my mind, it tends to be a perfectionist and it would see like how I could be better at whatever else I was doing if I only would put off the child raising stuff. But then instead I just say, it's all right. It's okay to suck at this. I was a blogger for a lot of the times while I was also a dad. And I'm like, it's okay to write fewer blog posts or let opportunities float away because doing something with my son instead. And so that was like, it was nice. I'm really not much of a multitasker. I can only do one thing like very best. And I thought that was like a nice way to just commit to that. And it felt really nice. And I'll never regret that. I felt like being a dad, I did the best job I could. And I feel really great about it. And also my son, like our relationship now is as good as you'd expect because of that, because we were so close since he was born.
Yeah. Yeah, that really resonates with me because there's times where I need to remind myself that's the primary job. And I'm in this group called Front Row Dads. There's a lot of them in Colorado, so you might know some. But it's me making an investment in learning how to be a better father, being around other people who are trying to be the best fathers and husbands that they can be. Yet I find myself, my brain wants to tell me you should be further along with this business and this and that. And it's all noise. So I have to remind myself, no, being a great dad is the most important work that you can do. And it feels like I'm missing the mark sometimes, not necessarily because of work, just because they test me so much. Being the mindful fire guy, that just adds insult to injury when I'm losing my mind over having to ask my son 45 times to do everything, including eating a bowl of cereal. But that's the work. Someone I was talking with, there's like, kids are here to test you. They're here to make you better at being a human being. So I guess my question to you is, I'm sure you had those moments where things were very tense. Your son was losing his mind for whatever reason that was very important to him at the moment. Any tips for staying grounded in those moments and just navigating the ups and downs?
Yeah, I think it helps to be good friends with other parents who are in the same situation so that at least you can share your stories and then realize, oh, it's not just me. I didn't just have uniquely difficult children. The funny part is not all children are equally difficult. Some are just like a dream compared to others. And it's not really the parents who create that. It's a genetic luck thing. There's high strung kids and there's chill kids. And sometimes in the same family, like one sibling and then the next one's easy or whatever. But it really helps to just understand that it happens and it's going to pass. And what really helps, in my opinion, is keeping space in the rest of your life for the intensity of child raising. And that's why I'm so big on the idea of the retirement or the scaling back of work. Because if you also are firing these two careers on maximum, and then you're passing back these kids back and forth, and there's hardly any time. And then on top of that, a lot of people, especially on the East Coast, they schedule their kids in all the other things, like all the sports and camps and stuff. And like their school is more than enough. Like, in my opinion, kids should not even be in extracurricular activities at all because, and this is controversial, especially on the East Coast, but because school is already way more scheduled time than any, like, in our human history. Like, that's not how kids work. So, like, they were just out playing and learning naturally, and playing is the best form of learning anyway, which is another thing. Like, the education system is ridiculous in that it's trying to fight kids' natural tendency to play, and they're like, stop playing, we're learning. But the hilarious part is, like, playing is learning, and that includes like the human and the animal kingdom. If you look at what kittens are doing, the little tigers or things, like, they're playing because that's how you learn. Anyway, we did the full school thing, but then after school, if my son wanted to join activities, I would let him. But in general, I just wanted to just go for a walk or go play in the creek and make a dam with some rocks and stuff like instead of going to a soccer practice 20 miles away. And that really helps to slow down the intensity of the child racing, because at least you're not driving around all the time and dealing with schedules and kids who are really just want to rest and go to bed. But you're like, oh, one more practice, Junior. You have to practice violin, then practice piano, and then do one more recital of your play before bed. And then we're going to get you on the Olympics team next year. Like, all this stuff, that's just asking for trouble. So just slow down the adult life, slow down the kid's life. And that makes parenting and child raising much easier. And I think it also leads to much happier, more grounded children. And I'm shocked at how worry-free, like, my son is just the most mellow guy now because he didn't have a scheduled hectic childhood. He's, I'm just working on something and I'll be working on this for the next few months. He does these like software projects now, and the level of patience, and he's not in a rush to make money from it. He's just like working and thinking. And I think that's like the slow paced childhood allows like deeper focus because you're trained to just relax and think.
Yeah, there's so much in there that I find really fascinating. Like the book Deep Work by Cal Newport. Your son sounds like he's doing deep work. He's immersed in what he's doing. He's not rushing, and he's learning as he goes. There's so much to that, because for me, what I find is that the more I'm rushing or the more I'm worried about the business not being where it is supposed to be, which is completely arbitrary and made up, and I couldn't even tell you where it's supposed to be, that bleeds over into my parenting. Then I'm short with my kids and I'm frustrated and I'm not listening and not really present with them. And that just, it spirals out of control, because then they act out to get more attention. And when I teach people how to create that vision for their post-FI life, it's like, how do you want to feel? And for me, it's unrushed. Every time, all the time, that's what comes to mind. And yet I could rush less and I could rush them less. It does seem like they wait till the last minute for everything, which I don't know where they got that from. Couldn't be me. But there's really something to that. And there's something to not overscheduling your kids, for sure.
Well, that sounds like some pretty mindful awareness that you're having. I'm sure that's going to serve you well as well, because it sounds like they're pretty young.
Yeah, so we're in it. I will say yesterday we had an amazing moment where we needed to teach them how to ride bikes, like without training wheels. And yesterday we took the training wheels off both their bikes at the same time, and they did great. And seeing the pride in their face was just like amazing. So it's those type of things. Yeah, there's a lot there. And I appreciate you sharing your thoughts on that because I know it's super important to you. It's very important to me. And I could be slowing down more. So, Pete, I know that community is such a big aspect of the life that you're creating. You mentioned the perfect day has a good dose of friends and community. And you love community so much, you created a community space called the Phi Collective, formerly known as Mr. Money Mustache headquarters. Tell me a little bit about that and how that's been evolving, both as an entity and as a source of community in your life. I'd love to hear about that.
Yeah, there was an unexpected thing, but in 2017, I had already been like writing as a blogger for a number of years, and I kept meeting people and hearing from people, and I would even have meetups. I would call a meetup when I was traveling for blog and then just meet a bunch of the blog readers, for example, in Seattle or whatever. There was always these really interesting people, but I never got to see most of them again. So then I realized, why don't we try the same thing, but in my own town and make like a permanent meeting space? So I bought this commercial building. It was actually like a pretty junky one that I got off Craigslist, and then I renovated it all and started using it for a gathering space. And I thought a co-working space would be the good official name because people already know what a co-working space is, and it's just a place with get your nice desks in there and lounge areas and coffee and everything. But really, it was instead of being focused around work, which most co-working spaces are, it was more like people who are in the FIRE community, people who read these blogs and want to meet each other and then do things outside of work. So that's how it is. It's always been, and it's evolved more and more like that. And then just over the last year, we had a bit of a breakthrough where the members themselves started organizing more events. So it's like more self-sustaining. And that has been great. Like there was definitely an experiment like we talked about earlier, and there was no guarantee it was going to work, but that was one of the experiments that definitely worked in the sense that I think it's like one of the coolest accidental things I've ever stumbled upon. And so much of my life, so many fun things that have happened since 2017 have been because of the headquarters, the HQ, which we now renamed to the Phi Collective. And I'm so happy that it still exists. And now I have friends, Mr. 1500, Carl and Mindy as co-owners. So it's bigger and better than ever, even though it's a relatively small little business still, or a little community. And you don't have to buy a building in order to have a friend group. But what it serves as is like a central organizing point for more things to happen. And I think that's what a lot of people miss in life is when we use the community word, and it's what it really means is unscheduled, unplanned interactions where you can run into your friends and people you like and meet new people, just like you would in a traditional human settlement before we were all atomized away into our houses watching TV. And that's what really leads to like things being fun, is just having new people in your life and new ideas that you wouldn't have otherwise come across. So I'm really glad it exists, and it's probably going to continue to exist for a long time now.
That's awesome. And so it's just like people can just come there and like they're members, so they can just come there and then see people that are also members and just strike up a conversation or make plans. And it sounds like you have events and things like that too.
Yeah, regular events really helps. So that way you can know when people are going to be there. Because if you just go at a random time, there might not be anybody in the space, or it might just be like one guy working on his laptop and too busy to talk. So the organized events really help. And also we have a Discord server similar to Slack where all of our members and a few hundred people, and they all make plans independently and become friends. And we have ways to share, like the buy nothing thing where you give away your furnishings that you don't want anymore, and all these other things where people are just chatting, like a mini version of Reddit, but it's like all people that you know. So that's very valuable. And yeah, we have a new, like a remote member idea, because so many people who are in the FIRE community don't live in Longmont, of course. So we opened up a new category of like super low cost remote membership where you can be part of the Discord community and you can still visit if you're in Colorado. And so the remote members are making plans to come together so they can meet each other. And that's been a really neat new idea as well.
Yeah, that's super cool. I'm really interested in this because as I mentioned, I'm all about creating opportunity through connection. I love bringing people together. We talked about the Legends dinner that I did at Economy where I met Carl, and I love bringing people together. And I actually have a little fledgling community. I call it Mindful Fire Legends. No surprise there. And we just get together online, meditate, talk about wins and how it's going on the path to FI. And it's been really enriching. And I only made that decision to do it. I had decided twice not to do it because it's not a big moneymaker. Obviously, it's $10 a month. And if people want to join, they can join at mindfulfire.org/legends. But going into my second year of early retirement, I stopped optimizing for money and I started optimizing for connection and fun. And that was the first thing at the top of the list. And it's been so fun just holding that space and connecting with people. It's been a lot of fun.
That's great. And I'm not sure if you've done any in-person meetups for your group, but since you're in such a big city, I imagine you would have some locals around. And the other thing, you're welcome to stop by the Phi Collective and then do a mindfulness event there. And we can invite your listeners and our local members and whatever Mustachians that might be watching this. And then
that would be awesome.
An in-person gathering. And it could include meditation or whatever else, like talks or group gatherings or a group hike in a scenic setting or whatever. So that's community just happening like that.
Yeah, that's amazing. I love that. And Carl and I talked about that 2 years ago, and I just have not made it out there, but I would love to. So yeah, we figure out how to make that happen. And yeah, just in person matters so much. Like I'm loving it online, would love it even more in person. So let's switch gears now, Pete, to the Mindful Fire Final Four. You ready?
Yeah, I've never heard what these are.
It's a surprise. You've done great so far, so I think you'll be fine. First question is all about envisioning. As I mentioned, I talk a lot about getting clear on what you actually want your life to look like and starting to live into it now. So I'm curious, when you think about your next 5 years or so, what's your big vision for the life that you're creating?
Funny part is I'm already living it. So I just want more of what I'm already doing. Like I could live 70 more years just enjoying the same type of thing I'm doing right now because there's enough variety. There's new people coming into my life. It's always healthy. It's always like little sub projects with people. And I live in a beautiful place and I'm healthy and have great family and great relationships. So I don't really need to change anything. The little details will change. Like maybe I'll have a mountain compound sometime where we can have gatherings there, like a cabin with lots of guest space. But in general, like I'm already where I want to be. And I think that's, it can even sound boring sometimes because people are like, what are your plans for the next year? I'm like, hopefully the same as last year.
Yeah, I think that's great.
I'm already happy.
Yeah, that's really what it's all about. It's not some big ambitious things. It could be. There's certainly people who want to go out and make a huge impact. Certainly you have, maybe on accident. You didn't necessarily set out to do that, but you did. But it's really about what is this ideal day that I want to live and how can I string more of these together, like you said earlier. So that's a great answer. Next question is, what piece of advice would you give to someone early on their path to financial independence?
I would just say, have a good time. Make sure you're not sacrificing a good life for saving a bunch of money, because my saving for early retirement, I didn't really compromise anything. I was buying whatever I wanted. I just didn't want a lot because I thought carefully. I was trying to be mindful about what things are worth purchasing and what things are free and better for you. Like going for a hike doesn't cost anything. Biking to work versus driving in the big dumb pickup truck, it's more fun and it costs less money. So I did a bunch of things like that where it just ended up with a surplus at the end, but I wasn't compromising. And I think like in general, if you learn what really makes a good life, everybody can practice the same ideas where you're saving a bunch of money, but you're also living your best life in the process. And then you quit your job when you don't need the money anymore, but you're not really changing your life at that point other than just getting a bunch more free time. So just enjoy the journey would be the short version of that answer.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree completely. You want to build that life now. And then when you have enough money, you just create more space to live that life more. Yeah. You don't have to actually change anything or figure anything out. It's just you continue walking down the path.
Yeah.
Third question is, what piece of advice would you give to someone getting started with meditation and or mindfulness?
I got into meditation when I was a teenager, interestingly, because I found a book on it when I was a kid. So I always found that subject interesting. So I would say find your favorite podcasts or recordings and do guided meditations, because I had to just depend on a book back then because it was before like the internet really. Nowadays, there's all kinds of wonderful experts that can just get you right into it. And then you don't even have to read, but reading is great as well. And practice makes it better. Trying it all different contexts, physical contexts. Like recently, I really like listening to meditations in a sauna, interestingly enough, because the extreme heat all around me helps focus serve as a focal point, and it just makes it even more intense. So experimenting with meditation is a neat way to get more into it of your life.
Very cool. I was going to say, I haven't thought about doing that, but I actually, every time I go in the sun at the YMCA, I do loving kindness meditation to my family. It's like a habit loop that I've created. So that's great. It really does focus you because you have that abnormal setting. All right. And the final question, Pete, is how can people find you online, connect with you, and learn more about what you're up to these days?
That's an easy one.
That's an
You
easy
just
one.
search on Google for Mr. Money Mustache and you'll find all the different stuff. Probably this interview will show up there at some point, Instagram, stuff like that. My main site is still mrmoneymustache.com, and that's where the real writing is. And from there, it'll lead you to other things. Like if anyone really wants to follow my work and is not already familiar with it, the best thing to do is join this email series. It's called the Boot Camp. And it's just like a free, totally non-commercial thing where you get what I felt were my best articles over the last 10 years, like trickled out to you once a week. So it's like a training program that will get all these ideas slowly into your head, and you can put them into practice as you go. And that's been the way that most people experience it since I started the boot camp, which is like 2022, so a few years ago.
Very cool. Yeah, I saw that. That's a great idea. Just one a week, the greatest hits over a long period of time. That's really what it's all about.
Yeah, and I like how it's automated, so I don't have to send the emails. People just automatically can work. It's like a little conveyor belt, and people hop on whenever they want. They can hop off if they want. And I get emails from people, and it's still delivering value after these years. Yeah. And I just like that kind of stuff. As a retired person, and the blog is not really a business for me. I like it just being there to serve people whenever they want.
Yeah, that's great. Thank you so much, Pete, for joining me on the podcast. It's been awesome, and I really appreciate you sharing your experience and wisdom with the audience.
Yeah, thanks. I hope this reaches some new people, and it was really fun talking with you.
Yeah, likewise.
Thanks for joining me on today's episode of the Mindful Fire podcast. If you enjoyed today's episode, I invite you to hit subscribe wherever you're listening to this. This just lets the platforms know you're getting value from the episodes and you want to be here when I release additional content. If you're ready to start your Mindful Fire journey, go to mindfulfire.org/start and download my free envisioning guide. In just 10 minutes, this guide will help you craft a clear and inspiring vision for your life. Again, you can download it for free at mindfulfire.org/start. Thanks again, and I'll catch you next time on the Mindful Fire podcast.